Hello the internet and welcome back to my channel. I got the Macintosh Color Classic back on the bench. This is episode 3. I do recommend that you go back and watch the other 2 episodes. They're quite interesting. I can't even remember myself what happened to this Macintosh. It's been sitting on my desk for quite some time. I haven't tested since the last episode, but long story short, we fixed the motherboard, replaced the usual capacitors, the system was still dead, and we discovered that the analog board had been basically destroyed by bad capacitors. So I recapped the analog board and it came back to life. The whole system came back to life. I was so happy. And then the system slowly but surely started showing issues. It became more and more unstable until after a long troubleshooting, he ended up just playing the Macintosh death chime, which sounds very cute, but it actually means go to an Apple store and buy another one. I was very stuck. I was in touch with the Apple community on Think Different, and they were very kind to put me in touch with Max, who very kindly sent me a TechStep reproduction here that we've seen on this video. It was just a quick test with my working Macintosh SE to make sure this unit was working and I knew how to use it. And I'm hoping that this tool is able to help me diagnosing this motherboard a bit more. The TechStep used to be the official diagnostic tool for the Apple service centers, and hopefully this machine will be able to point at a specific component, and hopefully I'll be able to replace it or diagnose it. My concern is the TechStep will come up with a generic error, like, I don't know, bus error. I don't even know this tool, so I don't know what kind of error messages you can get, because at that point it might be so generic that it might not be helpful. Now, meanwhile, Adrian of Adrian's Digital Basement came up with a way to access the Apple diagnostic routines without having to use the TechStep. So maybe I don't need the TechStep today to do this kind of diagnostic, but it's definitely going to be simpler. It's just that these machines, definitely the original ones from Apple, are very expensive and replicas are not available yet or not very available. So I have the TechStep, I'm going to use it, but take a look at Adrian's video, it's amazing. He discovered this way to access the old vintage Macintosh and with a serial port, more or less run the same tests that the TechStep would be able to do. I haven't tested this machine since my last video, so first thing first, we will turn it on and make sure that it's still stuck on the death chime cycle. So let's not waste any more time, let me thank today's sponsor, PCBWay, and now let's start working on this Macintosh Color Classic. I got main switch in the Macintosh, let's turn it on and see what it does. In 3, 2, 1, go. So it's the same situation, we have a gray screen there and we have the death chime. Now let's plug the TechStep and see what that means. Okay, I have wired the TechStep with the SCSI serial and 180B. Let's give power to the Macintosh. Let's turn on the TechStep. I'm selecting the appropriate ROM and I'm booting it. I'm selecting the Color Classic, number 3. Now let's get into test mode, number 3, and I'm assuming the TechStep should be able to turn on the Macintosh without a keyboard. Okay, the Macintosh is on, CPU is in test manager mode, and there is nothing on screen, there is actually a grey raster, as a moment ago. Now, I'm not familiar myself with the TechStep, so let me play with it a bit, and then I'll come back to you and explain you what I found. Right, I've been playing with the TechStep a bit and, well, everything seems to be failing, so I can't really see like a specific issue with the board, but I might have noticed something. So the computer has just been powered on, and if I'm selecting number 3, which is RAM size, I'm getting 4 megabytes, soldered 4 megabytes, which is the size of the RAM on this computer. Now, if I'm going back and I repeat the test, number 3, it says 4 megabytes again. I can do that as many times as I want. It always comes back with 4 megabytes. If I run, for example, the ROM check, number 2, this is one of the few tests which is passing. So this is telling me a few things. It's telling me that the CPU is kind of working, that there is an address bus and a data bus working between the CPU and the ROMs themselves. But now, if I'm going back and I'm testing the RAM size again, well, now I'm getting 2 megabytes. And if I keep testing other things, eventually I will get 0 megabytes. And the problem is now, if I test, like, I think it's the data bus, number 5, I'm getting fail RAM size, press 0 for info. And if I'm selecting here, it says 0 megabytes, soldered RAM, fail. And this slot left and right and sims, I think it's only saying that there are no sims installed in the system, which is totally fine. There is also a test for the video RAM, which is sharing the same bus of the memory. And also because at some point I lost the picture, I have a little question mark on the VRAM as well. And if I run VRAM test, it says test failed. And then it says Color Classic 256 kilobyte with a question mark. I don't know exactly what that means. Soldered VRAM fail. Now, more or less every other test is failing, is crashing, or is going into timeout. So unfortunately, I was hoping for a more precise, exact pointer, like there's an issue with that chip, or there's an issue with the video RAM, or there's an issue with the RAM, but everything seems to be failing. So my idea, and also the idea of someone who helped me from Think a Different, Max is one of them, is that maybe there is an issue with either the RAM or the video RAM or the circuit which is connecting everything together. Now, unfortunately, the RAM is soldered, the video RAM is soldered, so it's not as easy as just unplug a few ICs, replacing them. And these are not DIP ICs; they are whatever they're called. They need to be soldered. I mean, I could install some sockets, but they take quite a lot of space. I don't think it's doable. So I have a few ideas. Number one, I can probe around with the oscilloscope, see if I see anything wrong. I can take a look with the microscope and see if I see any damage, any traces, damage or anything. But number two, I think I'd like to remove the video RAM. And I think obviously the Macintosh is not going to start with video RAM, but if I remove the video RAM and the errors on the RAM are not happening anymore, it means the video RAM is somehow corrupting the RAM bus. Another idea would be to remove the RAM from the motherboard and replace it with a couple of sticks. I do have those sticks. Now the question is the Macintosh gonna work without the soldered RAM? I do not know, but if it does, it would remove the RAM from the equation, the PCB from the equation, and it would move the RAM to the sticks in just one step. I think as a first step, I'd like to remove the video RAM. It's just a couple of ICs, they're kind of big, it shouldn't take too much time to remove them, and we'll move from there. Right, I was poking around with the board with the oscilloscope, and at some point I realized that while I was running the RAM size test, which is always reporting 4 megabytes until I ran something else, it started reporting 2 megabytes and then 0 megabytes. And I believe, I'm not entirely sure about that, but I might have found something when I'm touching this area here. So right now it says 4 megabytes. So if I run it again, I've got 4 megabytes. But if I'm touching around here, there you go, 2 megabytes. If I remove the screwdriver, 4 megabytes. And eventually, if I keep doing this, 0. So I don't know if it's a coincidence. It might be, but maybe it's worth removing this IC and take a look at the traces around here, or maybe there's a fault with the IC itself. Before I start removing all this stuff, I'll just remove this IC, take a look around it. Maybe we found something around it. Okay, yes, as I remember, there's quite a lot of corrosion here. Now this might be nothing, or it might be the fault we're looking for. There might be a micro crack where that corrosion has happened. And I remember seeing those bits of corrosion last time, but I thought I wanted to be optimistic and thought, okay, it's gonna be fine. But I'm assuming that I will have to go through all the modules and get rid of that, scrape all these vias, for example. This via here is definitely corroded. I have a new tool with me now. I have a little engraving pen here, and I think I'm gonna use it, scraped, and we'll move from there once we see what happens when it's done. And there is plenty of free online projects for your vintage Apple computer. The CR2032 battery replacement, which I used on this very Macintosh Color Classic, was a free design which I downloaded from the internet and had manufactured by PCBWay, the sponsor of this video. The process is very easy. You just need to find the Gerber file of the PCB of your choice, upload it on PCBWay.com. The process is more or less automatic. I tend to change the color of my PCBs, as you might be able to see here. Then it's just a matter of selecting a postal service and the PCBs will be delivered at your place. I've been using PCBWay for quite some time, never had a problem with the quality of the PCBs, and the customer service is honestly top notch. PCBs, 3D printing, metal sheet fabrication and CNC machining are some of the services offered by PCBWay, so take a look at PCBWay.com, the link is also down below in the description, and let me thank PCBWay for sponsoring these videos on my channels. Their help makes these videos possible. So thank you very much, PCBWay. Now let's continue with the Color Classic. Right, I really doubt that that was the only problem with this board, but let's give it a go and see what happens. Well, maybe we are getting somewhere, because now I have 0 megabytes as soon as I power up the Macintosh. That's quite interesting. But after a reboot, we got 4 megabytes. This is so weird. If I remember right, the system was failing the RAM test immediately earlier on. What now is failing after a little while. I don't know, I have this gut feeling that the RAM or something around the RAM is still our problem. Now let's go back to the original plan. Let me remove the VRAM and let's see how the RAM behaves after that. Nothing too nasty under those ICs, but if there is something, it's something very, very subtle. So maybe this kind of corrosion is what we're looking for. But let's try without the VRAM altogether, see if the system even tries to do something. Nothing. Of course, I haven't connected anything. Oh gosh. Let's see what happens without VRAM. Wow, the RAM test has passed! Oh my gosh, I thought I would never see that. So far it looks like it's the VRAM corrupting the RAM bus. Amazing! This is absolutely fantastic. Let's do some more tests. Data bus passed. Address bus passed. Fantastic! Oh wow, this is so cool. And the RAM test passed again. I'm so happy. Let me find a more comprehensive RAM test. And the extended test passed. Now I'm not gonna run the super long test. I don't think I wanna spend like hours waiting for it, but this has never happened before. And at this point, I feel we might have faulty VRAM. Now we still need to fix all those bits of corrosions and stuff, but I don't think that an intermittent contact on the traces or the VRAM is causing this problem. On the RAM, yes, but the VRAM, I'm not sure, but anything is possible. I might just wanna get some replacements. It might be faster, unless they are silly money. I don't know, I need to check. And now all the previous tests, which were previously failing as in a timeout mode for whatever reason, they seem like they're all passing. Yes, everything seems to be passing now. Absolutely fantastic. Some of these tests, I really don't know what they are. But previously they were all failing, all going into timeout, and everything seems to be working fine now, which is, wow. Everything is passing. There was nothing like that before. Everything was failing one after the other. There is a fail on ADB test though I have a feeling, yeah, that's probably because I haven't got the other ADB connected. So that's probably totally fine. The serial test is failing the printer because there's nothing connected on the printer. And the sound test also passed. Amazing. Let me see if I can source those ICs and hopefully we have a working Macintosh Color Classic. On further inspection, I found what looked like a cracked trace, but the multimeter seemed to confirm otherwise. I went ahead and reworked all those corroded pads, and I decided to solder back the existing VRAM ICs, just in case. Alright, let's see if by any chance this now works. I really doubt, but let's give it a go. Let's enable test mode now. No? No power on ADB power line. What am I doing wrong? Let's try this again. No, it doesn't work anymore. Why? Right, it's dead again. I don't know what's going on. It says there's no power on ADB power line. I have a feeling this is another fault. I will have to go back to whether the power supply is still working and whether the, is it called the e-grid chip is getting power. Right, I've been working on this for quite some time and now the standby voltage has come back. I'm assuming it was a bad contact at the connector. I'm not sure, but it seems to be working because now if I'm going into test mode again, but it's still not working. But at least it's working. I mean, it's working as it powers on, but I still haven't got a picture, and I'm assuming that now my memory tests are gonna be all screwed up. Yes, the memory test is failing again, and I'm guessing if I'm checking RAM size now, well, it's still 4 megs. I'm assuming if I keep trying, probably get 2 megs or even 0 at some point. There you go. So it's the same problem. I would need 2 VRAM chips, assuming it's the modules and it's not something else within the circuit. So let me try and source one or 2 possibly, just in case. And I'll see you again when I have them. And I've received some memories I see from UT Source, the first time I'm ordering from them, and so far everything has been pretty good. I'm hoping they actually work. I've got 6 modules, 4 are -8 and 4 are -10 in terms of speed. Now the original ones on the motherboard are -10, so they should all work. These are just a bit faster. I think I'll go ahead and just replace them with the -10, and I think I'm going to replace them one at a time, because I'm just curious to see if I can spot which one is the faulty IC. So let's remove the first one and see what happens. You've seen enough ICs being desoldered on this video already, but I thought I'd show you this technique I used for this one. I'm using this copper wire as a reverse heat pipe to transfer some heat between the sides of the IC, so desoldering is faster and I don't stress the IC and the PCB too much with heat. I don't think it worked so much better than before, so maybe I'll use this technique for bigger ICs. The first VRAM IC has been replaced. Let's turn it on, and are we going to get a happy Mac chime? Let's find out. Let's go into test mode now. No, he's still not happy. Let's try and run some memory tests. I know after playing a bit with some tests here, I end up with the 2 megabytes of soldered RAM. So my only hope is that it's the other IC to be faulty. Let's swap it and let's test this again. The second and last VRAM IC has been swapped. Will it work? I hope it does, because if it doesn't, I don't know what to do. Power to the Macintosh. Let's turn it on. 3, 2, 1, go. No. And the Macintosh is still not happy. Anyways, I can see that the VRAM is being detected, 256 kilobytes, but I'm assuming if I'm going back to the previous menu and I'm checking the data lines, it will probably fail. Oh, it's passing now. Well, I don't want to be optimistic, but I see all the tests passing right now, so maybe there's another fault. Let's dig into the menu, into the test a bit more, and see what's wrong with it. The standard RAM test is passing, which is a good starting point. Oh. Well, I'm not sure what's happening. All the tests are passing, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But I have a sad Mac chime, so I need to dig a bit more into this test. Something is making this Mac unhappy, but the TechStep so far can't tell me what's wrong with it. Oh, look. Yes, I see 4 white bars on black screen. Perfect. So that is also working. You should see 5 green, 5 blue, 5 red bars. Yes, I do. I'm thinking of something. Is it normal for the Macintosh to play the sad Mac when the TechStep is connected? Let's unplug the TechStep and see if by any chance this thing is actually working now. Because I have a picture on screen and that implies that the VRAM is working. So let's unplug everything and let's try again without the TechStep. The TechStep is still connected, but it's powered off and I've got an ADB keyboard connected. Let's power up. Will it work? 3, 2, 1, go. Dead. Oh wait, because I have the sound here connected. Am I seeing anything on screen? No. Yes. Yes. What does the mouse? It's working. It is working. Oh my god. I hadn't seen that mouse pointer for so much time. The chime went through the speaker output because I had a wire in it. We should see a floppy something, even though there's nothing connected, but we should see the floppy. Oh yeah! It's working! It's working! So happy. Let's try again. I need to hear the happy sound. So let's power this off, give it a few seconds, and let's turn it on again. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes! It's working! Oh, this is so satisfying. This computer has been on my desk for months, and finally I can see a picture again. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess, let's not celebrate too early because last time he also tried to start, but it was very unreliable. So let's plug a Blue SCSI and let's try to boot into an operating system and see what happens. Now, before testing an operating system, I put back the extra RAM on this motherboard because I don't want to even think of running this thing, which is already slow by itself with very little RAM. So first thing first, let's just double check that we have, I think it is 8 megabytes. 10 megabytes, sorry, and I will run an extended test, which is probably going to take a little while, but I want to have an idea that the system is more or less stable before investing time with the Blue SCSI. And I've now run 2 extended tests, they both passed, so let's try that with Blue SCSI. Right, so I was testing the floppy, it would fail with the TechStep, I was trying to boot from this floppy that I have, and it didn't work, and I still had the hard drive connected, so it started booting from the hard drive, and it's working now. I think the Color Classic needs a floppy connected. Even though it's not running from a floppy, it needs the drive connected. At least this is what I'm thinking, because it's working now. I see 10 megabytes of RAM, and everything seems to be working totally fine. Now I'll have to find some test software and run lots of tests on this computer for an extended period of time before I can celebrate. But so far, I hadn't reached the desktop like this with no error messages in a long while. Alright, so I've been playing with the Color Classic for a little while. Well, the good news is it's been working fine. It's no issues or error messages or anything. The bad news is that the floppy drive seems to have a problem now. Now, I've reviewed the previous footage and I did clean and use this drive to actually boot the Color Classic and it was working, but now it's unable to format anything. So I went ahead and grabbed the 1.44 drive from my SE30, the one that was battery bombed. I'm making a video right now. If it's ready, I'll put a link here, I'll put a picture here and the link down below in the description. But basically the drive was untested and because it's more or less the same drive, I plugged into the Color Classic and it was kind of struggling. But I've seen this before with my SE, and usually the problem is the floppies. Though even though these are brand new, or they were brand new a couple of years ago when I got them, they are very old. The magnetic layer is wearing out. So these are not getting better over time. But eventually I found one floppy that actually works with the SE30 drive. It was able to format everything, telling me that the logic board on the Color Classic is totally fine. And then I just turn off the computer, I plug the original floppy of the Color Classic. It wouldn't read it. I try to format it. It does format it, but then it fails when it's verifying it. It's not even trying it. So I might want to take a look, but honestly, it's a big can of worms because the floppies themselves are getting very old and very unreliable. And fixing floppy drives is not easy, to be honest, because of the alignment and everything. But the good news is the operating system has been running totally fine, and I guess the floppy controller is working fine if it's working with this drive. So I don't think I want to invest too much time. I will definitely take a look, because I spent quite some time refurbishing, cleaning, and replacing the broken plastic cog on this drive, so it would be great to have it working. Now the next step is to take a look at the CRT. We've seen over time there's a little darker area here at the bottom, and I'm hoping that just reconnecting the degaussing coil will take care of that. When using a CRT, I'm always going through my isolation transformer and current limiter, and that's why I couldn't use the degaussing coil before, because the degaussing coil, it's an instant burst of about 3 kilowatts from mains. It's an instant thing, but obviously my current limiter wouldn't like it. So this is going to be the first time I'm actually plugging this computer straight to mains. So let's give the screen a good clean. And we're ready to power up. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. No bang. And I think that the degaussing coil definitely fixed the screen. I don't see any shadowing anymore. It looks totally normal from here. So that is absolutely amazing. Let me thank the Think a Different community on Discord, because I'm not a Macintosh person, and it took me quite some time to transfer this display utility to this SD card, because I couldn't remember how to do that since last time. So thank you very much, guys, for putting up with me and for all the advice. You're just amazing. Now, using this utility, I'm going to adjust the CRT. There are a number of trimmers at the back, plus a couple on the CRT neck itself for convergence, I understand. So there are a number of test patterns here, including this one, and I can use them to adjust everything up to spec. I can see, from what I can see here, the picture looks a bit bluish, and I couldn't capture that on camera, but earlier on, I noticed that the screen was kind of pulsing a color. I think it was pulsing bluish at some point. So I suspect that those trimmers will need to be, moved a bit and maybe allowed some contact cleaner. Hopefully it's going to be fine being CRT trimmers. And hopefully at the end we're going to have a perfectly aligned picture with the right color balance. The whole process is fully detailed in the Apple service manual, so I don't have to do any guesswork in here. So let me get started and we'll see what happens when I reach the end. Adjusting the CRT was not so bad. The trimmers at the back are pretty straightforward. The ones on the right hand side adjust the geometry, the ones on the left hand side adjust the white balance and the overall drive, which is the brightness of the white. Adjusting the geometry was simple once I familiarized with the controls. Some of the patterns included with the display utility were definitely useful. But the grayscale is critical to adjust the white balance and the cutoff level, also known as G2. The manual has got everything covered, but in short, some controls adjust the brightest whites, some others the darkest greys. And the G2 trim pot on the analog board sets the black level, so the goal is to have the left-hand sidebar black and not grey. However, when I touched the G2 trim pot, the picture disappeared. I panicked a bit, but it didn't take long to realize that it's a pretty coarse adjustment and the trim pot was a bit crusty, so I simply adjusted it too much, making the whole screen dark. After a bit of back and forth, I've noticed that the image was still pulsing blue, and at some point after adjusting the grayscale to a good result, the whole screen became reddish. I feared an issue with the analog board again. However, I realized that the whole image got reddish and not just the highlights or the darker levels. So I reached to the RGB signal cable, which carries the whole image, and tapped on it. Then the picture immediately became very red and then came back normal. So I knew there was a simple connection issue. After discharging the CRT and the capacitors, I removed the analog board, cleaned all the connectors carrying the video signal, and also resoldered the joints at the back. And once I powered the Macintosh again, the color pulsing was gone. Things were looking good, the computer was stable, and the OS was not showing errors anymore. As a last step, I decided to recoat the RAM sticks with some solder. I did spot some corrosion or maybe simply age on some of the pads, and I wanted to make sure that the system was as reliable as possible. The outcome was good and I was ready to do more tests before thinking of cleaning the machine further. And this Color Classic seems to be working totally fine. I am so impressed. I've been running the long memory test on this machine, which for 10 megabyte took 22 hours. Yes, I had to leave it on overnight. The workshop didn't go up in smoke and it's working totally fine. The machine was still responsive at the end with no graphical corruption as we had last time. The test passed totally fine, and then I ran the VRAM test, which also passed totally fine, and the system was still responsive. So I'm incredibly happy. The Macintosh has been working fine. I don't see any issues with it whatsoever. The screen is fine. There are no color pulses anymore. It's nice and sharp, and what you see on screen right now, it's a camera artifact. I'm not sure why the white is doing that thing, but it doesn't happen in real life. The floppy also works. I started playing with the operating system. I ran some software. I never had a single issue with this machine since I swapped that VRAM module. Now, this computer is far from being completed. I still would like to go through the motherboard and get rid of as much corrosion as possible. I need to rewash the motherboard again because we've been working on it so much time. I'd like to replace the SCSI DB25. I have a brand new one. The existing one is very rusted. Then obviously it's a matter of give the case a good clean, put it back together and return this machine to its owner after so much time. I thoroughly enjoyed this repair, which started as a simple refurbish process, a recap and make sure everything works, and it turned out with so many faults and so many plot twists. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as usual, I'd appreciate a thumb up down below, and consider subscribing to this channel and my second channel if you like this kind of things. Please do leave a comment, that helps me a lot, and don't forget I'm on Patreon as well, so if you want to support me there, the link is also down below in the description. There is a free tier, so no excuses, but if you don't want to support me on Patreon, well, maybe you can buy me a coffee, and the link is also down below in the description. If you don't want to buy me a coffee, I completely understand. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I do appreciate your time here. Well, that's it for today. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon here on my channels for my next videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.